Shabbat Shalom. Sticks and stones may break my bones. What a lie. What a lie. And I'm not talking just about emotional harm. Words matter. There's a reason why in this parasha of Metzora, the rabbis teach that Metzora is actually just an abbreviated phrase for Motzi Shem Ra. That this is an affliction that happens to people who bring out a bad name on another, for people that engage in slander, in gossip, in other forms of character assassination. That this horrible affliction, the skin condition Sara'at, is connected to that kind of duplicitous, insulting, and painful behavior. So apparently, God measures the words very, very carefully indeed. But so do we. If you are in the situation where someone comes up and begins on the sidewalk to slander you with slurs, to attack you for your race, your gender, your religion, your nationality, your profession, whatever it might be, does your heart pump a little faster? Do you feel your fists clenching? Do you consider hauling off and smacking this person? Be honest. You must feel that way, because biologically it is important. To understand our visceral reaction to slander and slurs, we have to go back a long, long time ago. I don't know, maybe into the 1800s, actually early 1900s. And to be honest, people were still talking like this even when I was a child. But let's go back into early history, not so recent that it becomes more difficult to see. Early history, you are part of a small village, a small tribe, and somebody in the tribe begins calling you names, calling you lazy, calling you unfaithful to the tribe, calling you disrespectful to the tribe's customs or the tribe's principles. Do you ignore it? Why not? It's just words. If you know they're not true, they're just words. Why would you respond in any way, shape, or form to some village idiot saying nonsense? Other people will hear this, and the words will have consequences. Because when the other people hear this, they will think less of you, and that will affect your standing in the community. Oh no, will I not get to sit near the chieftain's table when it's time to have the feast? Well, yeah, you might not. And that's actually a problem. You see, in a society of scarcity, which many people still feel we are in, despite all evidence to the contrary, but certainly in our historical societies of scarcity, your social status mattered greatly to your odds of survival, and even more so to your odds of being able to thrive while surviving. If you were considered to be a less than honest person, people would not do business with you, and your reputation mattered. If you were considered to be an untrustworthy person, people would not let their family marry you, and that would render you alone, which had not only emotional consequences, but financial consequences. For there has rarely been a time in human history where getting by as a solo person was a very good survival strategy. Usually you needed the aid of a spouse at least, if not a family and a clan. If you were considered to be a stupid person, people would not heed your warnings, your insights, or anything else that you had to contribute to the community, which might, yes, mean the community misses out, but so do you, presuming, of course, that your ideas were actually for the betterment of the community and yourself, which means that now you are also shortchanged because of their attitude towards you. But additionally, apart from just modifying your social standing, a lack of response to hateful and hurtful words in most of our prehistory times could also be a prelude to worse to come. If you refused to stand up for yourself, if you refuse to disabuse them of their opinion, first perhaps with verbal, but then more than likely for most of our history with physical rebuttals, then you would eventually be further taken advantage of physically. Meaning if you did not stand up for yourself against verbal assault, the next stage was inevitable. They would begin to take from you. They would begin to deprive you of what you had. And what are you going to do? Stand up? Everybody knows that you're a no-good Nick, a lazy person who doesn't help the tribe. So when you complain that so-and-so stole your hunt, who's going to listen to you? They'll listen to him, because that is what has become believed. And it won't stop at just stealing here and there. It'll eventually become full-on enslavement or murder and taking everything. And by that point, you have become so isolated from the group that who is going to mourn your loss? For most of our history, a person was required by survival itself to stand up against harmful words. And when you feel your blood pumping, when you feel that tension in your fingers, that is the part of you that survived the savannah, that survived the trek out of Africa, that survived the diaspora across the globe, saying, I didn't survive this long by turning my back to a potential threat like this. And in fact, he may only be speaking words now, but I can see where that is headed, and my words either have to be stronger or my fists have to be faster if I'm going to survive this. We are biologically attuned to treat words as a physical threat, not merely as words can never hurt me, as the nursery rhyme says. In fact, this feeling of the necessity for a reprisal is so powerful that even in the United States, there continues to be a debate of exactly what role fighting words have in mitigating the fight that results from them. Again, go back to our initial scenario. Somebody is harassing you verbally, slandering, slurring, insulting you, and you haul off and smack them in the face, knocking out 4 teeth. Probably very satisfying at the moment. And then the police show up. Do you have a defense that this person was saying naughty things and therefore they deserved my punch? Or are you guilty of assault? Are you guilty of the same crime that you would have been guilty of had you just walked up to the stranger on the street and punched them when they had said nothing? Are there words opening a door for your physical reprisal? We'll start with American law. Any lawyers here? Any personal injury lawyers? Any defense or prosecuting attorney? Oh, what's a synagogue without a lawyer? That's bizarre. So fighting words is a principle in American law, but one that is very uneven in its application. On the one hand, going all the way back into the 1940s, some of the most famous Supreme Court decisions talk about this as indeed saying the words, the fighting words, are of such value, of such little value to the actual expression of an idea that they are not covered by the First Amendment, and more so, deliberately using such words that are obviously going to trigger a violent response excuses the breach of peace by the person who punches or attacks the person that is committing the words. Thus saying, you say bad things to me and I punch you, I'm off the hook because you knew what would happen when you say something like that. You knew what the result would be. But interestingly, over the decades, that dictum has been softened. It turns out that many of the Supreme Court justices and legislatures, and indeed citizens of this country, began to scratch their head and say, well, wait a minute. Are you saying, therefore, that anything that can be considered offensive to another person gives that person permission to attack you? That if you were to wear a t-shirt that had a political slogan they disagreed with, for example, during the Vietnam War, that if you said, all the troops should come home, if you said America should be out of Vietnam, if someone else considered those to be fighting words because you are trampling upon their sense of patriotism, do they have permission then to punch you because of what you are wearing? And if so, is that a chilling effect on free speech? Does that create an atmosphere of fear, where now we have to watch what we say to such an extent because there are people, individual citizens, policing us because of their feelings being hurt by what we say, what we wear, what we do? And indeed, over the decades, the Supreme Court has rolled back that idea from the 1940s, that you get to punch anyone because their words have so little value, and saying, actually, it is not up to the state to decide which words have value. That is what our Constitution is protecting. If our Constitution is not protecting offensive words, then it's protecting nothing. And we have to make sure that there are other forms of redress. If someone slanders or libels you, then there is the court to recoup any losses that may have come because of their words. If a person is harassing you, then we have the police and the courts again to ensure protection for the person that is under such harassment. If someone is being bullied at school or at work, there are apparatus, at least supposed to be, in all of our different institutions to protect people from those types of behaviors before they escalate to the violent, before they escalate to the theft, before they escalate further. So why do people still haul off and smash each other? Because they don't trust the institutions. They don't feel that those institutions will, in fact, protect them. They don't feel that they've done such a great job, and I think, there's a reasonable argument to be made that our institutions are imperfect. No surprise. But there is still another aspect of it, which is we also still feel threatened. We still feel that those words will damage us. Not because they're slandering our business and we're going to lose customers, but when someone calls you a word, on the sidewalk, you feel still that primordial rage that you are under threat, that must be responded to if you are to establish yourself as a member of this tribe and not lose out. And that comes because we are still fundamentally afraid. But there is a solution to that. Not only to just simply wake up and realize that we are not living in a society of scarcity where somebody's word on the street is actually going to change the amount of food on your table, but awe. That's A-W-E, which is not as common or helpful a word these days as it used to be. Now people think A-W-W, which has a whole different emotion, still very important to life, but not quite awe. In fact, let's use the Hebrew word, yirah. You've probably seen all over our tefillot, our prayers, as well as throughout the Tanakh and the Psalms, the phrase yirah, yirat Hashem, yirat shamayim, the fear, the awe of heaven, the awe of God. And you probably wonder to yourself, am I supposed to be afraid of God? Am I supposed to be like, oh, God? Well, kind of. Yes, awe is not meant to put you in the corner, cowering as you would if there was a bear at your front door. But yirah is supposed to remind you that there is something greater than you, greater than anyone else, and greater than the world, and that something actually has in mind a particular path for this world to follow. And it doesn't include lashon hara. It doesn't include rechilut. It doesn't include sheker. It doesn't include gossip and slander and lies. And that God is not pleased by those types of things. That is wrong. That by looking through a perspective that recognizes that there is something greater than all, we are able once to realize that their behavior is wrong and not acceptable within society, not just because it hurts me or annoys me, but because it is fundamentally wrong. And secondly, that the universe itself is opposed to the person doing this. And thus I know that although I may be uncomfortable, I am uncomfortable but in the best of company of all, and on the side of God as this person dribbles from their mouth their hate. And third, I can take some consolation in recognizing that they are, in the most fundamental institution of all the universe, being judged for their behavior as it happens right now. And then I can recognize the smallness of them. By having the scale that is calibrated with God at one side and humanity at the other, I can recognize how pathetic such a person is, how trivial they are, and how much my life doesn't depend on them, that they have no influence over me at all. By having my life calibrated with God, with the awe, the majesty, the massive understanding of what God means, I can see how little they mean when they behave in that way. And then it works out that actually the words can't hurt. Again, we are not living in a society where the random muttering of strangers on the street is going to deprive me of my hunt, deprive me of my spouse, deprive me of my life. They may still be playing by the rules of the jungle, but they have not recognized that God does not have us live in a jungle. God has us live in a paradise if we would wake up and notice it and allow it to be the paradise it is meant to be. We can take every step necessary to make sure that our institutions are properly buttressed against such behavior, to prosecute actual acts of hate, acts of violence, acts of harassment, and all the rest to recognize as but dust across the pages of history, swept aside as the true magnificence of the world continues to unfold around them and despite them, and they are missing it. It's not easy to have that perspective because, as I said, our instincts worked very well for a couple million years of wanting to punch the other monkey in the face. But it turns out that doing so validates the idea that punching someone in the face is the way you get what you want. And you may feel more validated for that moment because surely they deserved it. But you will also be learning the wrong lesson, that the best way to deal with the chittering monkey is to punch them. And eventually you'll be the chittering monkey as well. Instead, we gather together and laugh at the foolishness of their insignificance. We gather together and weep for the hole that is in their soul that they are trying to fill by this type of rhetoric and activity. And we gather together to build a world where hopefully their children or grandchildren or great-grandchildren will find peace and joy, even if they cannot. With that sense of yirah, that sense of awe, that sense of greatness that God has given to this world, we can truly look down on all that they do because we are rising higher. Continue to have that perspective. Continue to have that calibration of your life. Do not be drawn down into the mud and the mire. You're better than that. Shabbat Shalom.